They were mistaken in this instance that Amada's brother was not immensely wealthy. She did negotiate, and her brother was finally released. At the same time, there's an area, a state in Colombia called Antioquia, and the governor was Guillermo Gaviria. He was a person who had had contact with Dr. Ramakrishna, from India, and also civil rights leaders in the United States, and had begun to learn something about nonviolence. He'd been in nonviolent workshops. So as the governor of the state, he was trying to bring the message of nonviolence to his own state, which is racked by violence from the rebels and the drug lords. The people in the countryside in Antioquia decided that they must have a peace walk to recover lands that had been taken over by all the armies. They said, we've had enough of the killing, we want no more of it. So 1,500 people in Antioquia walked 150 miles over 5 days to recover their land and to liberate it from the violent forces that had taken it over. In the process, they invited the governor to join them, the governor and the former governor of Antioquia to join them, and he did. When he was participating in the walk, the rebels came and said, we want to negotiate with you, we want to talk with you. And 4 people went with them to negotiate with them. They were kidnapped by the rebels and held. The 2 people from the United States, civil rights leaders who worked with Martin Luther King, were released, but Governor Gaviria and his compatriot were held, not released, kept in confinement for 6 months. All the while, Governor Gaviria was pleading with the national military not to try to liberate him. He said, I want to stay here, I want to be here, and do not send in the army to protect me or to release me. So he remained in captivity for 6 months, and he wrote in that period a number of letters which I think have a quality of an understanding and sophistication of nonviolence, but really it may not equal Gandhi and Martin Luther King, but it certainly reflects their sophistication. Here's what he said, and this is the governor in captivity. It consoles my soul to learn that at least our kidnapping has been an instrument to shape public opinion and to focus attention on nonviolent action. And he was very hopeful that that would be the beginning of the country learning about the necessity of nonviolence. The unfortunate thing was that in the process, the national government under President Uribe sent in troops to rescue him, and he was killed. He and 6 of his compatriots were murdered because the military intervened. So he was really a martyr to this cause of a nonviolent effort to liberate the area in his state. But the story doesn't end there. He has become a figure and an inspiration to many people. And in the subsequent election, his brother, Gaviria, was elected president and has made it his work to provide nonviolence training and instruction for all the employees, government employees, throughout the state of Antioquia. And so that legacy is being extended. It's now called Cathedra Gaviria, and this is an educational process. And I mean, these are people, they're not just talking about it, they're not just having conferences, they're not just working in classrooms. They're going into the poorest sections of the country around Medellin and the other large cities and initiating new programs. I visited them. I was very impressed. One of the programs in the poorest section of Medellin was headed by a former member of the Revolutionary Army who decided that he had to leave, that violence was not the way. So these are very concrete things of people committing themselves at tremendous risk to the presence of peacemaking within a violent context. The rewards for my friend Amata Benavides, the rewards have been that she has received 3 death threats so far. But she has also been recognized and acknowledged and is now a member of the UN High Commission on Human Rights. So I think it's one of the stories, and there are so many others like it. I'll just mention another one a little more concretely, and that's the example of the School of America's Watch. This is an organization that was initiated in 1989 by a man, his name is Roy Bourgeois. Roy Bourgeois served in the army in Vietnam. While he was there, he met a priest who had initiated an orphanage for abandoned children in Vietnam. And when he came back, when Roy Bourgeois returned to the U.S., he decided to study for the priesthood, the Mariner Order. He became a priest and then went to work among the poorest of the poor in Latin America. While he was in Peru, he began to stand with the families who were victimized by the death squads. And he was eventually thrown out. He had to leave the country because the government didn't want him there, because he was standing for the poor, the destitute, the people nobody cared about. He came back to the United States, and very intelligently, he became concerned about it. Where did these death squads come from? Why were these death squads in El Salvador and Nicaragua and throughout Latin America were employed to suppress the people? Where did we come from? He started doing research, and guess what he found? That many of these military leaders were trained in the United States at Fort Benning, Georgia, with taxpayers' money, and they were trained in torture. He had the manuals. They were sent to this place, Fort Benning, and they were trained in torture. And he then sent back. They were sent to this place, Fort Benning, and they were trained in torture. And he then sent back to Latin America as heads of their military, some of them honor graduates of the School of America, and were involved in the massacre. Well, El Salvador, 20,000 people were murdered. Throughout Latin America, death squads in many places. So he had all this research, he had it all detailed, and out of this then he began this movement called School of America's Watch. He went into the fort and put up